Henry, this is an absolutely respectable way for black to play. He's basically playing a perk opening because he's allowing e4, and the move bishop f4 is not often a move played in the perk, but there is a downside for black. Black has played bishop to g7, and this is a move that black often delays, because when white puts the plan of queen d2 and bishop h6 into operation, and this is one of the main ideas, black will waste a move by taking on h6. If you can imagine black's bishop was left on f8, black could take on h6 in one move. But because he's gone bishop g7 and he has to go bishop h6, it'll take two moves. So I think this is it's a slightly different to a normal perk. So what should black play here? Well, d6 is the only decent move, and now we go queen d2. Simple, effective chess. And obviously, one of our ideas, if black ever castles, we just go bishop h6 and we checkmate him. Thank you very much. We go here, we castle queenside, we push our h-pawn, game over. Easy, easy. So after queen d2, this has been played actually quite a lot at top level. I mean, we can see Grischuk here lost the game, Maxime Legrave lost the game with black, and most top players have played knight c6 now. Now, other options, let's very quickly think. Well, c6 seemed quite logical to me, but here I would probably wait a little bit before playing this and just finish my development. So maybe bishop d3, I want to defend this pawn, because I'm getting ready for b5, b4, and my bishop on d3 is at least doing a good job then. And if something like knight d7, well, I'll probably play bishop h6 at some point. I'm not going to wait for the rest of my life. I just wanted to get one more developing move in. And again, the position plays itself. We castle, and I really like white's structure. So knight c6 does seem like the critical move when black is aiming to play the move e5 at the correct moment. Now, what should you do here? Well, you have to be brave. This is a London System DVD for the brave player, and here castling queenside is my main choice, because we are really trying to act against e5 when we can take on e5 and pressure on the d file. Now, Ponomarov beat Maxime Legrave with knight to f3 here, and I have to say I think this is a very obvious and good move, because this is acting against the knight on c6 by covering squares that knight's defending. And now after bishop g4 he simply went d5, knight b8, knight d4, and this is another way you can get a nice advantage of white. The game continued, castles, f3, e5, takes on e5, bishop takes, castles queenside, and again we eventually see white castling queenside, and white won this game with a traditional attack on the king side. Let's see how he did this. Knight c6, bishop e3, just reassuring this knight here. This is like a good dragon really for white. It's like the dragon opening, but black doesn't have the counterplay. Knight d7, king b1, useful move. Knight e5, white completes his development. Black's only real trump is the c4 square, but now f4 and white slowly comes forwards. Very nicely played game, this one. The knight has to go passive, and now that white's completed development, h4. And the h-pawn's coming. h5, a lovely move here, g4. And the point being, if black takes on g4, we just open him up like a can of worms. I don't know where that expression came from, but it's an expression we use in England, don't know why. And we can see the opening's been a success. So after knight c6, I mean, I really like this position. Knight f3 is a sensible way to play, but I also like castling queenside straight away. And this game now went black castle kingside. He's got to do this at some point, and here I think knight to f3 now makes a lot of sense. Okay, as a little rule, I don't think you should rush bishop h6. I think it makes more sense to get the knight here to cover the central squares first. I mean, Richard Rapport played bishop h6 in this position, but after the move e5 and he took on g7, he probably should have taken on e5 here, because he went d5, and now this knight came into d4, and this was really annoying for him. This is why I want to have a knight on f3 to stop that knight getting active. I don't want to allow that. I want to at least fight for that square, make it difficult. And I didn't like this way that Richard played, actually. So after castles, knight to f3, we're fighting for control of d4, and our main thing we got to think about, this is the key thing, is to stop e5 and knight d4. As long as you stay aware for this, you're going to get a good position. You don't need to rush into playing bishop h6. Now again, bishop g4 must be the best move, because black is fighting for e5 and knight d4. Other moves make no sense. What else can black play here? He's lacking a plan. If black plays something passive, we are going to play bishop h6 now, because we're controlling the central squares with our knight. So bishop g4 only move. And now a very clever move. Queen e3. And again, this is just aimed against e5. The rook is lined up against the queen, because we've moved the queen out the way. So e5, we just take on e5. And basically it means that black can't play e5. And Grischuk was in a bit of trouble here because he can't play his one break, e5. He went knight d7, again trying to play this, and very clever play from white, bishop g5. Again stopping this plan, e5. Queen e8 was played, and now bishop h6. Only after really pushing black's pieces to inferior squares, a knight on d7, a queen on e8, does white swap off this bishop. So black now goes for his plan. He takes on f3. Good move from white. G takes f3. Well, the only move, otherwise you lose a bishop. And now eventually black plays e5. If black doesn't play this move, you go h4, h5, open up the h-file, checkmate. So e5, and here the correct play from white. White takes on g7, and he doesn't now play d5, because if he plays this, it allows black's knight into d4. Instead, the much better move, he takes on e5. Queen takes e5, and now knight d5. And with f4 to come and h4, it's a bit like Ponomari's game, white gains a very promising position. Knight f6, well, I mean, the problem here is that there's no good way to defend c7. If rook c8, I just play f4. And this is atrocious for black. The queen's coming to c3, pawn's coming to h5. It's a ready-made winning position. So black tried sacrificing a pawn, but he didn't get enough compensation, and white went on to win. Look, I'm not going to overcomplicate this segment of the DVD. I don't think there's any need to. I think the things we need to bear in mind is that after knight c3, bishop g7, e4, we want to play queen d2, eventually with bishop h6 ideas, but we should aim to stop the move e5, so at some point knight to f3, and then when black does play e5, as he does in this game, it took him a while, but when he does play e5, we should always aim to capture on e5. So we should do the taking on e5. And really that comes to the end of the way I'm going to recommend you play against g6, and the way I recommend you play against the Grunfeld setup and the King's Indian. Now it might seem a bit simple, this part of the DVD, but I don't think there's much more to say. I think this you're going to know more than your opponent when you play this. I think it's a very interesting way to play with knight c3. So remember, knight c3 against g6, and I think it can lead to some very effective and very interesting unexplored areas. So I wish you the best of luck. Hopefully